Good morning to everybody. Can you hear me in Pecos Hall?
Yes, we hear you.
Excellent. Thank you. My name is Gerasimos Rosados. I am the acting director for the Oil Conservation Division and also the acting chair for the Oil Conservation Commission. Today is Monday, May the 19th, 2025. We have the continuation of our case that we've been hearing for some time now as part of the Oil Conservation Commission. But before we started, I wanted to take roll. As I stated, I am Gerasimos Rosados. I am the acting director for the Oil Conservation Division and the acting chair for the Oil Conservation Commission. I turn it over to Pecos Hall. We'll start with Dr. Mpoma for our roll call.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is William Ampoma, Professor New Mexico Tech, and also designee of the Energy Secretary. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Lampkin.
Good morning. My name is Balin Lampkin. I'm a designee of the Commissioner of Public Lands, Petroleum Engineer.
Excellent. So we are all present for the case, just making sure that all parties are present as well. I always start on when I'm sitting in the auditorium. I start on my left-hand side and I move over to the right. We'll start from that side with Empire, please.
Corey Waymeyer for Empire. We're ready.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Waymeyer. Mr. Rankin.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Adam Rankin for Goodnight Midstream with my colleague, Nathan Jurgensen.
Excellent. Thank you. OCD.
Chris Moander on behalf of OCD.
Excellent. Rice.
Matt Beck on behalf of Rice and Permian.
Great. Thank you. And Pilot, are you on the platform?
Yes, good morning. Miguel Suazo with Beatty and Wozniak, appearing on behalf of Pilot Water.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Suazo. Mr. Harwood, you're also on the platform as well, correct?
Yes, sir. I see my seat up there on the podium is empty, and I'm filling it from a damp and chilly boatyard here in Maine.
Well, there could be worse places, though.
True.
And Madam Court Reporter, I see that you're on as well, correct?
Yes. Hello, good morning.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Okay, so we're ready to start. This is, I'm sorry, did someone need to say something? Okay. This is the consolidated cases by Goodnight Midstream and Empire, New Mexico. The case numbers are case numbers 24123, 23614, 317, case number 23775, and case numbers 24018 through 24020 and 24025. This is a matter to be heard by the Commission, and it's our continuation of our evidentiary hearing. Mr. Harwood, we transfer it over to you.
Thank you, Chairman Rosados. Good morning, everybody. Before we begin with what I understand will now be the last and final witness, are there any preliminary matters? I'll start with you guys, Empire.
Not from Empire.
Mr. Rankin for Goodnight.
Nothing at this time, Mr. Hearing Officer.
All right, Mr. Moander, I know there's a settlement agreement that's been reached in the dismissal of OCD from the case. Is there anything you wish to put on the record in connection with that at this point?
Nothing, Mr. Hearing Officer. I just wanted to appear today to be sure in case there was any lingering issues or opposition, which I am not anticipating any, but I'll remain here if there needs to be anything additional addressed. Thank you.
Okay. And I assume that you will successfully resist the habit and temptation of cross-examination.
Well, that's part of the idea, Mr. Hearing Officer, is for me to not work this case any further at this stage.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Rankin, is it Mr. or Dr. McGuire?
It's Mr. McGuire.
And will he be, I don't see him on my screen, but that doesn't mean he's not on another page. Is he appearing remotely or in person?
He's appearing remotely, Mr. Hearing Officer, and I think Ms. Apodaca has him now up on the screen.
Okay, all right. So I'm assuming that we're still operating under the earlier agreement, which is, if I'm reading my notes correctly, Goodnight will limit its direct examination of this witness to no more than 1.25 hours. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct. We had discussed being able to bank time, but I believe that shouldn't be a problem with this witness being able to fit his direct within that time frame.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, if you're ready to proceed, I'm not seeing Mr. McGuire on my screen. Let me move to another page. There he is. Good morning, Mr. McGuire. You're on mute. If you please raise your right hand. You swear and affirm the testimony you give here today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury.
I do.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Rankin, your witness.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Officer. Mr. McGuire, will you please state your full name for the record?
Preston McGuire.
By whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by Goodnight Midstream, and I am the Geology and Reservoir Engineering Manager.
Have you previously testified before the New Mexico Oil Conservation Commission?
I have not.
How about the division?
I have not.
Are you familiar with the Goodnight Midstream applications that were filed in these consolidated cases?
I am.
And are you also familiar with the applications filed by Empire seeking to revoke Goodnight's 4 saltwater disposal well permits within the EMSU?
I am.
Is your curriculum vitae attached as Goodnight Exhibit B1 to your written direct testimony, which is marked as Exhibit B?
Yes.
Does it provide an overview of your education and work experience as a geological engineer?
Yes.
Do you seek to be qualified as an expert in geological engineering before the commission?
I do.
Have you conducted a study of the geology of the area in and around the EMSU, in particular, the Grayburg and San Andreas formations?
I have.
And have you also conducted an engineering analysis of the reservoirs that are found within the Grayburg and San Andreas formations?
Yes, I have.
Have you prepared written direct, rebuttal, and supplemental testimony and exhibits that are marked as Exhibit B, and with attachments Exhibits B1 through B64?
Yes.
Were those exhibits prepared by you?
They were, or under my direction.
Okay. Any corrections or changes to the testimony or exhibits that were filed in this case?
There's one change that needs to be made to one of the exhibits. I believe it's Exhibit B47. There was some dates on that map that need to be adjusted, but other than that, no.
I think we're going to address that in your direct summary. So when we get to that, will you just please point out what needs to be corrected?
Yes, I will.
With the exception of those corrections to Exhibit B47, do you adopt the testimony and the self-affirmed statement, and your direct statement, and your rebuttal statement, and your supplemental statement that are marked as Exhibit B as your sworn testimony today?
I do.
At this time, Mr. Examiner, Mr. Hearing Officer, I would tender Mr. McGuire as an expert witness in geological engineering.
Any objection, Empire?
We do object. The witness has zero education in engineering, zero experience in engineering, no certifications, is no member of any engineering society or affiliated group. I think it's an incredibly dangerous precedent for this OCC to recognize somebody with such an utter paucity of education and qualifications as an engineer. We have no objection to him being acknowledged as a geologist, but he is no engineer.
You want an opportunity to voir dire the witness on qualifications?
That would be appropriate at this stage, I think.
All right. Don't prolong it. I'll give you 10 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. McGuire, what did you get your bachelor's degree in?
Bachelor of Science in Geology with an emphasis in petroleum geology.
Where?
Western State Colorado University.
Western State Colorado University does not have its own engineering school. Doesn't it partner with University of Boulder, Colorado? University of Colorado, Boulder.
I believe so.
It also has no petroleum engineering classes, does it?
I don't know currently.
When you attended there, it also had no petroleum engineering classes, did it?
I don't believe so, no.
Where did you get your master's degree?
TCU.
The master's degree is in what?
Geology.
With respect to TCU, they offer no petroleum engineering degree, do they?
I don't know.
They have mechanical engineering and civil engineering, but no petroleum engineering on campus in any shape, form, or fashion. Isn't that true?
Unaware.
The TCU does not offer any classes in petroleum engineering, do they?
That's not true.
With respect to the societies, I'm going to bring up your resume off of LinkedIn. Do you keep your LinkedIn resume current?
I don't know. I haven't updated it in quite some time.
Actually, I'm looking. If the commissioners wanted to look at your, and we can do this either way, in your exhibits, you have a CV. On your LinkedIn profile page, you have very similar material. Are you a member of any engineering group whatsoever?
I was a member of SPE for a while, but I think I've let that lapse. I haven't paid the dues this year.
It's not on the CV that Mr. Rankin just asked you about, is it?
I don't believe so, no.
And so if the commissioners want to know if there's a single entry on your CV that's in that I think he's going to offer for evidence, you could tell the commissioners that you've identified no engineering affiliations in there whatsoever. Isn't that true?
That's probably true for the CV.
You have no PE, no state, be it New Mexico or anywhere else, has ever acknowledged you as a professional engineer?
That would be true. I do not have a stamp.
In terms of testimony, a tribunal, a district court, a federal district court, state district court, a regulatory body such as the OCC here or the OCD or the Railroad Commission of Texas or a regulatory body in North Dakota, no body, no court has ever in the history of time recognized you as an expert in engineering. Isn't that true?
This is my first time doing this, so yes, that would be true.
And so to just put a bow around that, if this OCC wants to know if it would be the first tribunal that would have ever recognized you as an expert in any kind of engineering, you would agree this would be the very first time, correct?
That's correct.
Ignoring any commission, district court, be it state or federal, or regulatory body ever acknowledging you as an engineering expert, nobody's ever hired you as an expert in engineering, have they?
That's not true.
What third party hired and retained you as an expert in engineering?
My current role today.
Oh, you're talking about Goodnight.
Yes.
Okay. Outside of the party that's in litigation here, nobody has ever hired you as an expert in engineering. Is that right?
That's true.
Additionally, the idea that Goodnight hired you as an expert in engineering, that's not true either, is it?
No, my role, a significant part of my role and my work experience here at Goodnight has been in reservoir engineering.
The truth is that approximately 7 years ago, you were hired by Goodnight as a geologist, not an engineer. Isn't that true?
Well, that was my title, but throughout that time, probably about half my workload has been reservoir engineering based.
My question is what they hired you for. I'll just publish your LinkedIn bio. And I can
Okay.
only go off of what you actually offered in the evidence of the case by way of the CV that Mr. Rankin discussed. But if we go
Sure.
down to when we scroll, you had 3 summer internships before joining Goodnight. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
So if the commission wants to know about experience before joining Goodnight, your only experience would have been 3 summers, and those would have been geology summer internships, correct?
Primarily, yes, but for when working at Antero, yeah, that's a multidisciplinary team where you're working in all aspects of oil and gas production, including reservoir engineering.
Then you're hired as a geologist by Goodnight in 2017, about 7 years ago.
Closer to 8.
And again, according to this, you didn't list engineering as part of your job function, did you?
It's on my CV.
I'm talking about what you've posted to the consuming public on the internet. You don't list engineering as part of your job responsibilities at Goodnight, do you?
Well, this is just stating my title. Yes, my title is geologist, but a big part of my work is reservoir engineering based. We could look at the CV and see those descriptions.
The first time that Goodnight acknowledged you as a engineer would have been in October, November of 2023, while litigation was well underway already, correct?
I don't know if litigation was well underway at that point.
You don't remember the timing of the permit protests?
Well, if that's what we're calling litigation, then sure. But I don't think that.
Now, with respect to the engineering involved here, you can tell the commission in your witness statements you have discussion about ROZ, correct? ROZ?
That would be true.
Goodnight Midstream is a trash company. It is not an oil producer, is it?
We have some production wells.
I didn't see anywhere in your materials that there was any experience or work by you to produce 1 single barrel of oil. Can the commissioners find that anywhere in your CV materials?
No, that's not our primary business.
Okay, so with respect to what you would do if you wanted to claim to be an engineer, you have not assisted in the production of 1 single drop of oil. Isn't that true?
That's not true.
With respect to modeling actual ROZs, you have never modeled an ROZ before, have you?
Can you define model?
Prepare an economic reserve summary of hydrocarbons in an ROZ.
That would be true.
In terms of a drilling engineer, a completion engineer, a facilities engineer, a reservoir engineer on ROZ oil, you've never done that before in your entire life, have you?
Specific to ROZ oil, that would be correct.
You've also received no education on ROZ. Isn't that true?
Yeah, I don't know if there's any classes out there that are specific to ROZ.
My question is, if we've talked about your utter lack of any experience whatsoever in your life with ROZ, and I'm not, if I'm saying something amusing, I apologize. I mean, it's a serious proceeding and I'm trying to be serious with you here. We've talked about zero experience. If the commissioners want to know about your education on ROZ, you would tell them you have zero of that. Isn't that true?
Yes, I have not worked an ROZ in producing an ROZ. That would be correct.
In the history of time, no tribunal has recognized you as any expert in ROZ, and nobody has hired you to be an expert in ROZ. Isn't that true?
That would be true.
With respect to other opinions that you have in this case, pertaining to water chemistry, you are not a chemist, are you?
Never claimed to be.
You've received no education in chemistry, have you?
That's not true.
Where on your CV that Mr. Rankin is about to offer in evidence would we find expertise or education in chemistry?
chemistry is a part of getting a science degree. You have to take chemistry.
With respect to, if the commission wants to know whether they would be the first tribunal that accepts your sworn testimony and recognizes you as an expert in water chemistry, you can tell them nobody in the history of time has ever done that, have they?
Has ever done what? Sorry.
Recognized you as a water chemistry expert.
Yeah, haven't claimed to be.
You do not claim to be a water chemistry expert, true?
Yeah, I mean, I can read data and understand basic data sets relating to chemistry, but to the inner workings of chemistry and the mechanisms that are behind it, no, I would not claim to be an expert in chemistry.
Have you been listening to all of these proceedings?
But yeah, the vast majority of them, I've had to step out for a few of the witnesses from time to time, but the vast majority.
Have you heard your Goodnight witnesses actually testify that you were going to be the water chemistry person here today?
No, that would have been Tom Tomastic.
Perfect. So if the commission wants to know about water chemistry, they've heard everything they're going to hear from Goodnight Midstream. True?
Well, I've done some review of some of the documents that have been provided from Empire and just looking at the data set there and compared the data sets.
My question is about expertise, because in terms of locating the SWD wells that are in litigation here, you were not the person that picked those locations or drilled those wells, were you? That was all done
no.
before.
No, yeah, I was at the company at the time and was involved in conversations, but no, I was not overseeing the project.
So we know you're not a fact witness. And so the question then is the matter of expertise and water chemistry expertise. And I think you've already conceded and given me that you would not hold yourself out as a water chemistry expert. Isn't that true?
Sure. Yeah, I definitely would not call myself a chemist, but I can read data sets and compare data sets.
I pass the witness and renew the objection of Empire that the witness is not educated or qualified as an engineer in any capacity, or on the matters of ROZ, or on the matters of water chemistry, which permeate repeatedly the sworn written testimony that he's offered to the commission in the original witness statement, the rebuttal witness statement, and the supplemental witness statement. Thank you.
Mr. Rankin, is the witness being offered as a water chemistry expert?
No, Mr. Hearing Officer, he's not. He testifies as to it. He has background and experience managing water chemistry as a saltwater disposal company, similar to the way Mr. West testified about water chemistry. He's an engineer, has no qualifications or expertise in water chemistry. However, as part of his job obligations and responsibilities as the manager of reservoir engineering and geology for Goodnight Midstream, with oversight over the operations of all of its disposal wells in New Mexico, Texas, and North Dakota, he has a lot of responsibility to understand the functionality of the saltwater disposal wells, how they are scaling or not, the corrosion issues. And so he has a lot of practical experience working with his team and overseeing the health and functionality of his saltwater disposal wells. So he has actually a lot of on-the-job experience. And so that I intend to offer him based on that experience and background managing these saltwater disposal wells with his chemistry experience.
Well, I heard you were offering him as an oil reservoir geologist and a geologic engineer.
That's true. And I think to the extent he testifies about chemistry and management, it relates to his oversight in managing saltwater disposal wells. It's part of his obligations and job responsibilities as a manager of all of Goodnight's injection wells.
Okay, given Mr. Waymeyer's questions, I'll give you an opportunity to question the witness more at this point in time about his education, training, and or experience.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Officer. Mr. McGuire, just in terms of your experience doing reservoir engineering as part of your job responsibilities when you first were hired by Goodnight Midstream, will you please just give us an overview of, from the time you were first brought on to Goodnight in 2017, please give us an overview of your job responsibilities and duties as they pertain to reservoir engineering.
Sure. So we put fluid in the ground, right? And so it's pretty difficult to separate the rock from the fluid that you're injecting into that rock. So you have to have an understanding of the rock as well as how that fluid goes into that rock. And that all that the latter half of that is all reservoir engineering based. I've been working with reservoir engineering since my time at Goodnight, and roughly half of my responsibilities since being at Goodnight were reservoir engineering based. I've had training in engineering over these last 8 years, and I'm competent in reservoir engineering as it pertains to putting fluid in the ground.
I'm going to pull up your resume and CV, Mr. McGuire, and I'm going to ask you just to highlight, starting in May 2017 through May 2021, when you were hired with the title as a geologist, what specifically did you do that relates to reservoir engineering?
So drill and complete wells, that has stuff to do with reservoir engineering, but primarily it's monitoring the saltwater disposal wells and how they perform over time in their well health. I think there's more pertinent information as we scroll up in this.
Okay. So, but just to be clear, from the time you were hired, and who hired you at Goodnight?
Mr. Steve Drake.
Okay. And when he hired you, what were the job duties that you undertook at the time of your hiring?
Yeah, so started mapping reservoirs as well as looking at injection performance of how our wells were operating over time and how efficient they were putting water into the ground. And if there was a change in that, then we would discuss and understand why that change occurred and seek remedies to fix it.
Okay. So scrolling up here, when you were assigned the title of senior geologist, explain during this time frame what you did as that qualified as a reservoir engineering experience.
So yeah, it says right here, reservoir analysis, system performance for management and stakeholders. Operational challenges, a lot of that is based on reservoir engineering and not geology. Innovative solutions to enhance injection efficiency, that's reservoir engineering. Monitored the injection data to analyze well health, I've already kind of covered that a bit. Understanding injection capacity, that's all reservoir engineering. A lot of what I do also is we look at the oil and gas production of our customers to understand how much water we think that they're going to be sending us. So we do decline curve analysis on those wells to make sure that if we're going to build a pipeline to somewhere, that it's worth building that pipeline and there's going to be sufficient volumes coming out of those wells to pay for the project.
When you say, just to be clear, Mr. McGuire, is that something you personally were responsible for doing?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Was there anything further during this period as a senior geologist that you can speak to about reservoir engineering?
Yeah, so I guess I could go into the details of what that looks like to understand injection performance. So I have experience analyzing step rate tests, fall off tests, bottom hole pressure analysis, hall plot analysis, scaling index, injectivity index. Again, then going back to the production stuff, decline curve analysis, inventory analysis, EUR mapping. Those are some examples.
So I want to just understand a little more detail. When clients or potential customers come to Goodnight with a proposal for you to take on water, what was your responsibility to evaluate that request, and what exactly did you do to analyze whether or not Goodnight had the capacity to take on that water?
But yeah, so we see how much capacity we think we have on our system. So we look at how our wells are performing and understand if there's any excess capacity that can be sold to a client. And then we look at, okay, how much water is the client saying they need disposal operations for? They'll send us a forecast and we'll do a review of the area that they're planning to develop and make sure that we agree with their forecast.
And tell me specifically how that review that you do to evaluate their forecast involves reservoir engineering skills and experience.
Yeah, so we do decline curve analysis. We develop type curves for different areas, understand how many remaining locations we think are left to be drilled. And in the aggregate, that can give us what we think, how much water we think that a certain area is going to produce. We use that to underwrite the cash flows on that system and get us comfortable with building a pipeline to that developing area.
And that's a job that was your responsibility with the company as a senior geologist, correct?
That's correct.
And that was assigned to you for what areas of Goodnight's footprint?
The entire company.
Okay. Now, Goodnight Midstream then hired you to be their manager of the reservoir engineering and geology, correct?
That's correct.
And tell me about your job responsibilities here and how much time approximately you spend doing reservoir engineering in this capacity.
Well, it varies from time to time. It can be, way more than half of my job if we're not, actively mapping reservoirs and doing geology. A lot of my job is overseeing reservoir engineers that we have here or consulting reservoir engineers for any consulting work that we have. I understand the concepts of reservoir engineering and how they play into our role as a saltwater disposal company.
Now, Goodnight Midstream, just give us a little background on Goodnight Midstream. Tell me a little bit about the footprint where Goodnight Midstream has operations.
Yeah, so we operate in North Dakota. We're the largest mover of saltwater in the Bakken. And then we also have operations in the Delaware Basin, Central Basin Platform, Midland Basin, as well as South Texas and the Eagle Ford. We have roughly around 65 saltwater disposal wells, which I'm the manager of. I have to keep up with all of those wells and make sure that they're performing adequately.
And Goodnight Midstream, when it hired you to be the manager of their entire, and your job is to manage all of those, correct, across the entire footprint.
That's correct.
And when Goodnight Midstream hired you, they entrusted you with the job of overseeing their entire reservoiring program, correct? Reservoir engineering program, correct?
That would be correct.
And now you mentioned that Goodnight Midstream actually does manage some production of oil wells. Is that correct?
Yeah, we have a few of them.
And that falls within your duties as well, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Mr. McGuire, thank you for your time, Mr. Hearing Officer. We oppose the objection here. I believe that it goes to weight, if anything. Empire themselves had a witness who was a geological engineering expert, and with the commission and their expertise, they can weigh Mr. McGuire's testimony based on his experience and the veracity and the reasonableness of his opinions.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Rankin. Can you please stop screen sharing and save our eyeballs here on the platform? Thank you.
May I respond very briefly?
Just a minute, Mr. Waymeyer. I want to make sure we cover all our bases here. Rice, what's your position?
Mr. Hearing Officer, as you pointed out, as the courts, including the U.S. Supreme Court, Sixth Circuit, have held, expertise is not only based on education. It's also based on training and experience. Mr. McGuire has 8 years of experience in reservoir engineering. He oversees the reservoir engineering program of Goodnight for at least the last 2 years. I did not hear any voir dire of the content of his report, which is lengthy. As we all saw, it has 3 different parts. I didn't hear any inquiry into analysis that he performed incorrectly, analysis that was, I'm sure we'll get to that. But I think that his expert report analysis shows that he has the technical expertise to be accepted as an expert. And as Mr. Rankin said, the objection at this point goes to weight and not evidence. Throughout case law, you'll see that machinists, mechanics are oftentimes accepted as experts, including engineering experts, based solely on their experience and training. So Mr. McGuire is competent in the areas that he is being tendered as an expert in, and I'm sure that we'll hear significant cross-examination about the underlying data and perhaps his application of that data. But this so far goes to weight and not the admissibility of his expert testimony.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Beck. Pilot, Mr. Suazo.
Pilot agrees with Rice's position and Goodnight's position. I don't have anything to add, so no objections to this witness being recognized as an expert.
Okay, Mr. Waymire, I don't want to beat a dead horse, so I mean, what else, if anything, have you got to add? And you know, please, 1 or 2 sentences would be great.
This commission has an important gatekeeping function. Goodnight has made clear that it intends to use the state of New Mexico as a dump site. As we go forward, it is a dangerous precedent to set to acknowledge somebody with this utter absence of education or experience in reservoir engineering as an expert before this proceeding. In terms of the actual evidence that has come in, as you perform your gatekeeping function, this is not a matter of weight. You've heard no education in engineering. You've heard no experience whatsoever in engineering. You've heard no training on the job in engineering. What he said is he works as part of a multidisciplinary team. That does not make him a landman. That does not make him an engineer. That doesn't make him an accountant. That doesn't make him a lawyer. The point is that there are experts to perform these functions of which he is not. He works on a team that includes them. Every engineer in this room should be offended by the idea that this man is an engineer. I know many of them are offended.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Waymire. Your objections are noted. But I'm going to rule in favor of Goodnight on this. You know, first of all, the rigorous standards, gatekeeping standards that might apply to experts in court proceedings are somewhat relaxed here. And not only is this an administrative, not a court proceeding, but you know, we have a panel of OCC members who themselves have deep technical backgrounds, and they are better qualified than your average lay jury to assess the depth and qualifications of experts that appear before them. So I do agree with Mr. Rankin and Mr. Beck that this goes to the weight and not the admissibility of the witness's testimony. So he'll be recognized as an oil reservoir geologist and a geologic engineer. And of course, you can make objections as we go along. You know, he testified that a big part of his work is engineering. He's got 8 years of on-the-job training, and I think at times Mr. McGuire said that at least half of his work involved engineering. So, you know, there's a first time for every expert, and I guess this is Mr. McGuire's. All right, so Mr. Rankin, with that, you can proceed, and I'm gonna start your stopwatch now. We're not gonna count all this voir dire against you, so your 1 1/4 hour starts now.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Officer. At this time, I would also move the admission into evidence of Mr. McGuire's direct, rebuttal, and supplemental testimony marked as Exhibit B and the attached exhibits B1 through B64.
Empire.
We object. With respect to the state, there are numerous opinions concerning water chemistry and water chemistry analyses. The witness has sworn under oath he is no such expert, and he's also no fact witness. There is no place in this sworn testimony for this witness to have any opinions about water chemistry. All of those should be stricken. Additionally, opinions on ROZ and economic feasibility of ROZ here in the EMSU permeate the opinions. The witness has zero education, zero experience with ROZ. You could pick somebody off the street would know as much about ROZ as this witness. All of those statements require exclusion for the reason that there's been no showing during the voir dire or the sworn statements that he has any such experience. And in fact, it's been established to the extent he could have any experience over the last 7 to 8 years at Goodnight, they do not produce oil. No hydrocarbons come out of the ground. They dispose of salt water. That's what they do. And so the idea that this witness would have opinions in this case on ROZ is inappropriate. All of those should be stricken. Additionally, I respect your decision with respect to admissibility in the first place by way of the testimony. We would also object to all of the reservoir engineering opinions for the same reason I stated back at the qualifications. But at a bare minimum, the water chemistry and ROZ require exclusion.
Okay, Rice.
No objection. Again, I think this goes to the weight, not the admissibility, and I'm sure on cross-examination we'll hear that.
Pilot.
No objections.
Okay, the exhibits will be admitted over Empire's objections, and of course, we expect Mr. Waymeyer your usual vigorous cross-examination.
Thank you.
Mr. McGuire, have you been present or did you listen to the testimony provided by all of the witnesses presented during this proceeding?
The vast majority, like I said earlier, I had to step out for parts of the expert testimony, particularly Mr. West and Mr. Wheeler. I had to step out at times during those testimonies.
And have you reviewed the written testimonies of all the witnesses that have been submitted as part of this proceeding?
I have.
Did you prepare summary slides reflecting your up-to-date opinions based upon observing the testimony provided during this hearing?
I have.
Mr. McGuire, I'll move over to and share my screen so we can review your summary slides. Sliding over to slide 2. This shows your exhibit B3 from your direct testimony. Just give us an overview, if you would, of Goodnight's operations in.
I'm sorry, did you cut out? Do I still have audio?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So yeah, this is a map that's depicting our Llano system. It takes water from the Delaware Basin and moves it to the Central Basin platform, where we've identified a world-class disposal reservoir. It contains 110 miles of pipe, 11 active disposal wells, 6 water recycling facilities, which are shown by the green dots along the pipeline there. We have 13 dedicated operators connected to 29 different receipt points. Oh, sorry, I messed that up. The 29 different receipt points are the green dots along the pipeline there. We provide disposal services for about 640 producing wells at the time of my testimony, but that's grown a bit since my testimony was submitted. Our thesis here was to take water from the Delaware Basin, where there's been issues with saltwater disposal wells, induce seismicity. The bullseyes on the map here show seismic response areas where disposal has been either curtailed or shut in due to seismic events. And there's been a lot of issues with Delaware Mountain Group disposal that has interfered with Bone Spring production. So our thesis was to move the water out of those areas of concern. Goodnight has spent approximately $300 million on this system here. And we have 4 wells that Empire is asking to be revoked. And on average, they provide about 60,000 barrels of water per day of disposal. And if that disposal is revoked, that would have an immediate impact on approximately 19,000 barrels of oil per day of current production that would likely be shut in until an alternate disposal could be found for that water that comes with that production.
This next slide here shows the same exhibit B3. Do you recall the testimony of Empire's witness, Mr. Jack Wheeler, when he testified that Empire asked Goodnight to move its 4 existing wells to a location 2 miles outside of the EMSU boundary?
Yes, I do remember that.
To your knowledge, has Empire ever reached out to Goodnight directly to make such a request or through counsel?
No, I'm not aware of that.
To your knowledge, has Empire ever attempted to reach out to Goodnight to make any effort to reach a settlement, including an offer to pay all or a portion of the costs to move its wells outside the EMSU?
Objection, Rule 408, settlement negotiations are irrelevant and privileged.
Yeah, how is that relevant, Mr. Rankin?
Well, Mr. Wheeler testified that they did, and I'm asking whether or not that's the case.
Mr. Wheeler, let's see. Okay, that's been too far back for me to remember. Was that one of Empire's witnesses?
It was, Mr. Hearing Officer. Mr. Wheeler testified that they would potentially be willing to make that offer, and he believes that they did. And so I'm just asking whether Mr. McGuire recalls whether that was ever the case.
May I reply
Okay.
very briefly?
No, overruled.
You can answer, Mr. McGuire.
No, nobody here at Goodnight, at least to my knowledge, knew that request was made.
How much would it cost, referring to the slide, how much would it cost Goodnight to move its 4 existing saltwater disposal wells in the EMSU to a location at least 2 miles outside the unit boundary?
So for the 4 wells that are inside the unit, as it states on the slide here, that would be approximately $40 million. Those costs include the P&A, surface facility relocation, reclamation, new pipeline, and the new drills. That also assumes equivalent injection capacity that we currently have, and we would not need to add new wells.
And how much would it cost to move all of Goodnight's existing saltwater disposal wells, including those already outside the unit, to locations at least 2 miles away from the EMSU?
Yeah, so that would be all of our wells with the exception of 2 of them. And that would be an approximate cost of $120 million. And all of those same cost assumptions that I just described for the last point there apply here.
Okay. Next slide here is slide number 4. Did you hear questions, Mr. McGuire, during testimony about the value of oil production supported by Goodnight's disposal activities?
I did.
Referring to the slide, can you explain how you estimated the value of oil sales supported by Goodnight's disposal operations?
Yeah, so this is a simple calculation just to estimate the cumulative oil sales that Goodnight has supported to date and then projected going into the future. So from 2018 to 2024, we took our actual disposal volumes and divided them by 3.1. That's the large scale average oil water ratio for all of the unconventionals in the Delaware Basin in New Mexico. And then we multiplied that by the average WTI price for that given year. That represents the bold line there from 2018 to current. And we can see that currently we've supported more than $5 billion worth of oil sales. And then going into the future, it's the exact same calculation, although we're just taking our 2025 projected volume and carrying that forward. And then we're assuming a WTI price of $70 with no escalation. We can see in the next 10 years, according to this graph, it looks like that we'll be able to support about $20 billion worth of oil sales in the state of New Mexico.
And just to be clear, this does not assume any new wells or new capacity, correct?
That's correct.
Moving to your next slide, number 5. We're moving into your testimony about Goodnight's disposal zone and the San Andres. Just give us a quick overview from your testimony of the history of San Andres disposal.
Yeah, so the EMSU has a long history of San Andres disposal, even before the time it was a unit. The San Andres in the unit has been used as a saltwater disposal zone since the 1960s and just outside of the boundaries of the EMSU since the 1950s. Tens of millions of barrels have been disposed of into the San Andres before the unit was ever formed. EMSU operators continue to utilize the San Andres as a disposal formation after the unit was formed, and even the EMSU operators actually added wells to that after the unit was formed. Empire continued to rely on San Andreas disposal with their own saltwater disposal well, the EMSU #1, or by sending water to Rice's EME disposal system, which also disposes inside and just offset the unit. It doesn't really make any sense that the EMSU operators would continue to utilize the San Andreas for disposal if there was known communications with the producing zone. Empire claims that there should be no disposal within 5 miles of their 3 units here, the EMSU, the EMSUB, and the HEU. That 5-mile number comes from Dr. Buckwalter's testimony. But when we look inside that 5-mile halo around these 3 units, more than 60 SWDs have been disposing into the San Andreas, and most of them are still active today. Hundreds of millions of barrels have been disposed into the San Andreas, and it's still an under-pressured reservoir. Empire is the first operator to claim that disposal is interfering with unit operations and is selectively targeting Goodnight, while there's other commercial SWD operators operating within the same area.
Moving to slide 6, this is pulls from your exhibit B47 in your rebuttal testimony. Just give us a quick overview of what this exhibit reflects.
Yeah, so this is a map showing all of the San Andreas disposal wells that have disposed into the San Andreas within 5 miles of Empire's 3 units here in the area. And this is the map that I need to correct 2 dates on, which I'll do here. The first date that let me say what is actually being posted with all these wells here. What we're showing with these wells is the date of first injection into the San Andreas and then the cumulative volume that has gone into the San Andreas through each of those wells. So 2 dates need to be corrected here. The first date is the Trucker SWD. It's up on the west side of the EMSU. Its date of first injection was 4 of 1975. And then the other date that needs to be corrected is our Rhino SWD. The date that's being posted there is the date of first injection when it was a Devonian well. But that date or that well was plugged back to the San Andreas, and we started San Andreas injection in that well in 7 of 2020. But the volume that is being posted with that well is the correct volume for what's gone into the San Andreas here. So within 5 miles of these 3 units, there's been more than 961 million barrels has gone into the San Andreas in this 5-mile halo. The reason that I have a greater than symbol there is because OCD records only go back to 1994, and before that, the records are pretty sparse. Many of these wells were disposing before 1994, so we don't have a complete history, so we know that that number is larger than what is documented.
Referring to this slide, Mr. McGuire, explain the significance of those numbers related to Empire's reservoir simulation that was presented by Dr. Buckwalter.
Yeah, so Dr. Buckwalter only used disposal volumes from 1994 forward, but we know that the San Andreas in and around these units has been used for saltwater disposal since the 1950s. We summed up the volume that he had in his model, and his sum volume was 588.7 million barrels of water. So Dr. Buckwalter is missing many of the wells that are on this map here. He only modeled Goodnight and Rice, and then he later added the Empire well, and then one other well, the Parker Energy Service well, right where your cursor is there. But he's missing all the rest. So in aggregate, he's missing more than 370 million barrels of water that have gone into this reservoir. And there's no way that he could have an accurate reservoir simulation, particularly on pressures, if he were to include that volume given his current model setup.
Next slide is slide number 7. This was moving into your testimony about the potential or claimed communication between the Grayburg and Goodnight's disposal zone in the San Andreas. Just referring to the slide, give us an overview of your key takeaways from your testimony.
Yeah, so the Grayburg is not in communication with the disposal zone. Empire has not shown any direct evidence that the disposal zone is in communication through fractures with the producing zone. EMSU oil and water production has remained unchanged since Goodnight began its disposal operations. If the communication was as pervasive as Empire claims, there would have been direct evidence of the impacts, and saltwater disposal would have been shut in long ago. There was a lot of water that went into the ground before Goodnight commenced its disposal operations, and if that communication was as pervasive as Empire claims, yeah, it would have been dealt with long before Goodnight started. Claims of changes in Grayburg produced water chemistry are unsubstantiated. Core data presented by Empire actually shows a competent confining layer that separates these two reservoirs. Empire claims, really without evidence, that fracturing is most prevalent at the top of the anticline of the EMSU. Find that interesting because it doesn't make sense that Chevron would place the EMSU SWD #1 at the top of the structure in the area where they thought that there was the highest potential for communication. That doesn't make any operational sense. But the main reason that we know that these two formations are not in communication with each other is because there's this pressure differential between these two reservoirs. There's a certain pressure system that's associated with the producing interval in the Grayburg, and there's a completely different pressure system that's associated with the San Andres disposal zone. And we'll get into the details of that here in a bit, but one of the major pieces of evidence that confirms this is that there was a major loss circulation after drilling through the confining layer that separates these two reservoirs. That's happened in nearly every well that has drilled through that down into the San Andres. The water supply wells saw that, as well as all of the SWDs operated by Rice and Goodnight.
Next slide is slide number 8. This slide shows your Exhibit B40. Just review for us what your Exhibit B40 shows and highlight your testimony on that.
Yeah, so this is the monthly oil production that was from the EMSU that was provided to us from Empire. It goes back to 1970. So the graph on the left-hand side here is, like I said, the monthly oil production curve from 1970 to present. And we can see that after the water flood was enacted in the late 1980s, that the decline of that has been predictable. And it's actually at its flattest decline that it's seen in the life of the field. The graph on the right zooms into the last 5 years since Goodnight started its disposal operations inside the unit. And we can see that the production is very, very flat. It has a very, very shallow decline, and there's no indication that that there's been anything happening. It appears to be unaffected despite the lower well count that the black line shows the well count, and we can see that the well count has declined over the past few years, and oil production has remained the same. So the field is actually operating more efficient than it was just a few years ago.
You highlight here with a bracket West Exhibit I-18 in the top right corner. Explain what that shows and the purpose of that bracket.
Yeah, so Mr. West, in his direct testimony, showed Exhibit I-18, which was a table of oil production, and the claim was that they were seeing an unreasonable decline in their oil production. But we can see just the month after that bracketed interval there that the oil production came right back up. So Empire hasn't shown any direct evidence that Goodnight is impacting Grayburg production whatsoever. Empire has not pointed to a single well that they feel has been impacted by disposal.
Next slide is slide number 9. This goes to the chemical analysis that was, or chemical samples that were provided by Empire from your Exhibit B42. Explain what this shows from your testimony.
Yeah, so this is all data that was provided to us by Empire for chemical analysis for Grayburg wells that are directly offset to our injection operations within the unit. So just to walk through the graphs, we have TDS up on the top left-hand side, sulfate on the right, and then chlorides is down there on the bottom left. I've highlighted the wells that Mr. West used in his Exhibit N9. Mr. West did not show all of the data that was provided to us. He just showed a subset of this data. So the first thing to say here is that Empire's claim that that sulfate is a major indicator, which shows San Andres communication. But if we look at the sulfate numbers, they're flat to decreasing. So no indication that by their own argument that San Andreas water is infiltrating these wells. All of these values are within the historical ranges that have been provided by Empire for the field, and none of these are anomalously high when you look at the rest of the field. If disposal was in communication with any of these wells, all of these values would be increasing over time, and we're just not seeing that.
Next slide is slide 10. This also reflects your exhibit B42. And the table on the right is from Mr. West's summary slides, slide 21. Explain what this slide shows and how it relates to your chemistry, the chemistry analysis and chemistry discussion in your testimony.
Yeah, so the tables that are on the left-hand side is just it's the same data that was shown on the graphs on the last slide that we were looking at. And again, I'm highlighting the wells that Mr. West used in his exhibit N9. And then on the right-hand side is data from wells all across the entire field. And we can see that none of these values that we're seeing here are anomalous when compared to the rest of the field. Actually, we can see if we look at the 407 that earlier data, the TDS, chloride, and sulfate was even higher, and Mr. West did not show that data point in his exhibit. So when we compare these numbers, we can see that, like I said, nothing's really out of line. The TDS ranges from 16 to 30,000 parts per million, the chloride from 7,000 to 15,000 parts per million, and then the sulfate from roughly 0 to 2,800 parts per million. And when we compare that to the rest of these data points that are directly offset to our injection, we see that nothing stands out as being anomalous.
Are there historic water samples in Empire's testimony and exhibits that show higher chloride concentrations for the Grayburg from before Goodnight started disposal operations than even what's depicted here?
Yes, sir, that's correct. In one of Mr. West's figures, he showed other historic water chemistry tests where the chloride specifically were as high as 30,000 earlier in the life of the field. And I believe Mr. Tomastic found data where some parts of the field were as high as 90,000 parts per million chlorides.
Just at a high level, talking about water chemistry issues, does Goodnight treat its water prior to disposal, and how does that affect the water chemistry prior to disposal?
Yeah, so we have a pretty robust chemical treatment program. The main thing that we do is try to reduce the TDS before it goes downhole. So the average TDS that we get from our producers out in the basin ranges from 200,000 to 250,000 parts per million. And by the time we run it through our chemical treatment program, we can bring it down to, on average, about 140,000 parts per million. So we can significantly reduce those constituents. The other thing that we do is before the well goes down, before the water goes downhole, we treat it with scale inhibitors.
What is your understanding of Empire's current use of San Andreas water as part of its operations?
Yeah, so my understanding is that they only have one operable EMSU water supply well. I believe it's the 459, which is the most distal well from our operations. It only produces minimal volumes intermittently, maybe a few thousand barrels a month. And Empire has provided no evidence that Goodnight is having any effect on that water quality.
Explain from the beginning of the water flood operations in the 1980s, was San Andreas water ever compatible with Grayburg water?
No. EMSU operators used the San Andreas knowing it was incompatible with the Grayburg, despite representing to the commission that it was compatible with the Grayburg. And their main justification for that was because the San Andreas was the only formation that could provide sufficient volumes of water to enact the water flood.
Next slide here is slide 11. On the left-hand side, you got the core data plot. That's from your exhibit B27. And then down in the middle, bottom of the slide are core photos from Dr. Lindsay's exhibit B34. And on the right is a structure map showing the top of Goodnight's structure map for the Goodnight's pick for the San Andreas that I think you produced to Empire last summer during discovery. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Has Goodnight mapped the permeability barrier that confines its disposal zone?
We have.
Reviewing this slide, Mr. McGuire, can you review your analysis of your assessment of the permeability barrier you've identified?
Yeah, so the EMSU 679 actually shows a really good confining zone. So the plot that we're showing here on the left-hand side is the vertical permeability plot that was measured in the 679 core. And we can see that there's at least a 100-foot interval here that has very, very low to zero vertical permeability. So that's what I'm showing there is that confining layer. Going over to the next photo here, this is the only photo that was in the testimony from that interval. So that's a core photo from the 679 at a depth of 4335. So that's inside that confining layer that I'm showing there on the left-hand side. And we can see that there is a fracture there, but we can also see that that fracture is totally cemented up and no longer conductive of fluids. The other thing to note is that Dr. Lindsay's fracture study did not go down into this interval. I think its last, the bottom of his fracture study is about 4180, I believe. And we can see that our confining layer is, at least 100 feet thick, starting at 4250. And again, the thing that I'm showing here on the right-hand side is that Empire has claimed that the highest potential for communication occurs at the top of the structure. Chevron decided to place their San Andreas saltwater disposal well at the top of the structure. And if they really thought that there was the potential for communication, it doesn't make any operational sense to put that well there.
Mr. McGuire, is the confining layer that you've identified in the core data correlative across the EMSU?
It is.
And is that reflected in your San Andreas structure map?
It is.
Moving to slide number 12, this is a modification of Mr. West exhibits I-5 and I-6. Just explain, if you would, what this exhibit shows and summarize your testimony around this Empire's claims on these two exhibits.
Yeah, so the figure on the left-hand side is from Mr. West's testimony, and it's showing a number of wells and their cumulative water production as of 1986. And then on the right-hand side, we have a figure that's from the technical committee report from the unitization documents for the EMSU, and it's a three-dimensional histogram that is depicting the 1981 cumulative water volumes. This is not intended to show pluming of water of any sorts. It's just a like I said, a three-dimensional histogram. In the technical committee report, there's no discussion of San Andreas water pluming up, and there's no description of that for this particular figure. So on the left-hand side, I've also annotated some of these wells, as well as highlighted in blue here, Edgewater. So Dr. Lindsay has described that there's this Edgewater encroachment coming in from the left-hand side or the west side of the field that stems from the Goat Seep Aquifer. So it's very well documented that Edgewater encroached onto the west-hand side, and he showed in some of his figures that it actually made it all the way to the top of the structure here. But there are three wells that seem to be anomalous when looking at the rest that are at the top of the structure. And so when you look at these, there's a pretty clear explanation. So the 239 was drilled open hole below the oil water contact. The 262 was drilled open hole within 12 feet of the oil water contact. And the 362 was drilled within 16 feet of the oil water contact. So as production were to continue to occur in those wells, it's totally expected that those wells would cone up water from below the oil water contact. Again, I'm showing the EMSU number 1, similar to the last figure. Empire's claim that 239 shows evidence of this water pluming up from the San Andreas. Again, if that were true and Chevron confirmed that, why then would they put the EMSU SWD number 1 as a direct offset to that well? Again, it does not make any operational sense. When we look at the figure on the right-hand side, we have one spike over there that is higher than all the rest, and that is the 239 that was drilled below the oil water contact.
Mr.
So
McGuire,
it's a pretty easy
go ahead.
explanation there.
Mr. McGuire, you're referring to the oil water contact, for clarity. That's the at minus 325 sub C based on the unit documents at the time of unitization. Is that what you're referring to?
That's correct, yes.
Are you aware of any documentation, reports establishing communication between Goodnight's disposal zone and the overlying reservoir?
No, I'm not.
Moving to slide 13, explain how, summarizing your testimony, how you're confident that the permeability barrier that you've mapped across the unit creates an effective seal isolating Goodnight's disposal operations.
Yeah, so proof of the seal is that we have two different pressure regimes associated with these two different reservoirs. There's one pressure system that's associated with the Grayburg, and there's a different pressure system that's associated with the San Andres disposal zone. There's some data that shows this, and the first data point would be that Grayburg injection wells shut in with pressure at the surface, while all San Andres SWDs shut in with negative tubing pressure. They can't hold a column of fluid like the Grayburg injection wells can. Another data point is that all the SWDs in the area were able to hold a column of fluid when drilling through the Grayburg, but once we passed through the confining layer that separates these two reservoirs, we had complete loss of returns, indicating that there's a major change in the reservoir pressure regimes there. And that pressure differential occurs across the entire field. So we're confident that this barrier is extensive across the entire UMSU. That drilling experience happened in every single one of our wells. And then after discussions with Rice and Permian Line, they confirmed that to be the case with all of their wells as well.
Slide 14 here is from your exhibit B45, and I believe it's from Empire's data on pressure in the Grayburg. Can you just review what this slide shows and summarize your testimony about it as it relates to differential reservoir pressures?
Yeah, so during discovery, we requested from Empire what is their minimum shut-in pressure on all of their Grayburg injection wells, and this is the document that they provided to us. I've highlighted the column that says min shut-in pressure reviewed, so we take that as that is the reviewed number that Empire is going with for all of those wells, and we can see that on average these wells shut in with 524 pounds at surface.
Okay, next slide here is slide 15. This is from your exhibit B12 and your direct testimony. Explain what this shows and how it relates to what you understand about the difference in pressure regimes between the Grayburg and San Andres.
Yeah, so just to say it off at the outset, this well, when it's shut in, is on negative tubing pressures, and we can see that on the right-hand side with the red curve, that it falls below zero instantaneously after an injection cycle. But just to walk through the graph that I'm showing here, we have in blue the instantaneous injection rate in barrels of water per day, and that goes with the y-axis on the left-hand side. The red line is surface tubing pressure, and it goes with the y-axis on the right-hand side. And then I've dashed in where zero tubing pressure is on this graph here. And so we can see that this well can inject at more than 40,000 barrels of water per day with less than 80 pounds at the surface. This is also the reason why we're requesting an increase in the Andre Dawson well from increase in rate or permitted volume for daily permitted volume. It has a very similar injection profile to SOSA, and SOSA's not far from it. So this is the reason that we're requesting the increase in the permitted daily volume for that well.
Before I move off the slide, just if you would make sure you explain how your testimony, how this relates to the prior testimony on the other slide.
Yeah, I said that at the beginning, but just to be clear, so the second that the pump shuts off, the well instantaneously goes on vacuum. That's very, very different from all of the Grayburg injection wells, which hold pressure at the surface. So there's no way that these two wells are in the same reservoir.
Okay. Next slide is slide 16. This is the top table here on this slide is from your exhibit B21. The bottom table here is from new data that was acquired in April of this year and provided to Empire. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
So just referring to these two tables, will you explain what the data shows?
Yeah, so we try to keep an eye on what our bottom hole pressures are doing over time. So we take static fluid levels at least twice a year to monitor how the bottom hole pressures are changing over time. And so this is just some data that's reflecting some of those measurements here. So the tables are exactly the same. I'll just walk through them just to get everybody oriented here. We have the well name, the date that the fluid level was taken, the shut-in tubing pressure at surface, the fluid level in feet from surface, the top perf, the mid perf, the base perf, the calculated bottom hole pressure at the mid perf point, and then the calculated pressure gradient. So the table on top were from fluid measurements that were taken in July of 2024, and then the next table down were measurements that were taken at the beginning of April of this year. Between these two dates, 39.3 million barrels were disposed in all of these wells here, and we can see that the average gradient basically didn't change. It went from an average of 0.381 to an average of 0.383. So that's a minimal change given that volume of water that has gone in the ground.
You've highlighted the Piper number 2 in both those tables. Just explain why that's the case.
Yeah, so Piper, it's the most distal well on our system, and it because of that, it does not receive nearly as much injection fluid as these rest of these wells. So at the time that the Piper fluid measurements were taken, it had been shut in for a month or longer, whereas the other ones were only shut in for maybe a few hours. And as what we can see is that one, it's the lowest fluid level compared to all of the other wells, despite being the well that has injected the most in its lifetime. It's the oldest well on the system. It's been operating since 2012. So it's put more volume in the ground than all of the other wells. Yet it still it has a fluid level that is significantly lower than all of those. So what that tells me is that if we were to let all of these other wells shut in for more than a month, that they would likely come back down to closer to where that fluid level is in Piper.
What does this data tell you about the accuracy and reliability of Dr. Buckwalter's simulation?
Yeah, so in Dr. Buckwalter's testimony, he said that on average, the bottom hole pressure of or the San Andres reservoir pressure as a whole would increase about 7 psi per million barrels injected. And we can see, so for the 39.3 million barrels, his model would estimate that the reservoir pressure in the San Andres as a whole would go up 275 pounds. And we're clearly not seeing that here. Just to go to the next bullet point here, we got some information from Rice on a 1959 bottom hole pressure survey in the San Andres disposal zone. So 961 million barrels has been injected into this reservoir, and there's been a very minimal increase in the bottom hole pressures. The pressure gradient in 1959 was 0.36. And today it's 0.38 for more than 961 million barrels in the ground. So that tells you, one, just how big this reservoir truly is.
And finally, what does this data tell you about the alleged impacts to Empire's plans to inject CO2 into the San Andres disposal zone?
Yeah, so Empire has alleged that we're raising the bottom hole pressure significantly through our injection, and that's clearly not the case. And that raise in that bottom hole pressure in the San Andres has, they allege, is causing them to need an elevated CO2 volume to enact their project. And that's just not the case. We're really having, we have had very, very little to de minimis effects on the bottom hole pressure.
Next slide, slide 17. This is Empire Cross Exhibit 10, same data that they put on a chart. Just explain what this shows and information on the right side of your.
Yeah, so I like that Empire put this together because the table on the right-hand side actually shows the shut-in time for uh, prior to these wells being measured. And the graph just shows the fluid level in feet from surface relative to time. Again, I'll point to the Piper SWD, which is the purple line there. And we can see that given enough time for the well to equilibrate with the larger reservoir, that it falls back down to near original conditions where the fluid level is at about 1,050 feet from surface. And the last two data points are, the curve is a little odd because it curves a little weird, but those two data points are exactly the same number.
Does the data on that table reflect a relationship between how long the well is shut in and the fluid levels?
Yeah, the table on the right shows the shut-in time prior to the measurement being taken.
And is there a
we can see for
relationship?
Piper, we can see for Piper for the last two data points, it was shut in for 2 months and 1 month, whereas prior it was 20 minutes, 11 hours, and 20 minutes.
Okay. Slide 18 is from your exhibit B15. I think this is where we're going to start talking about your pick for the top of the San Andres. Reviewing the slide, just give us the background from your testimony on the San Andres top at the EMSU.
Yeah, so this is a exhibit that was presented at the unitization hearing for the EMSU, and this is a description of the San Andres that was included in that exhibit. So we can see that they said that the approximate depth was 4,100 to 4,500 feet and was approximately 1,130 gross feet thick. That doesn't match what Empire is claiming. They're claiming that the San Andres was closer to 1,500 feet thick. The other thing that I'm marking here is that there's no clear marker for the top of the San Andres, which can be traced across the field. Dr. Lindsay actually states that in his rebuttal testimony that it's very difficult to correlate in logs. So because of this, different operators of the EMSU have placed the top of the San Andres at different stratigraphic locations over time. When you review all of the well file picks for the EMSU wells, there's no consistency in picking the top of the San Andres. It's all over the place when reviewing what different operators did over different times.
So in light of that background, explain from your testimony how you went about identifying the top of the San Andres.
Yeah, so the Grayburg has historically been the producing zone where the San Andres has been the water management interval. Goodnight relied on the Chevron well file pick from the water supply wells because they were targeting the San Andres specifically. We also relied on this document and other unit documents as to where the San Andres should be picked. We also got guidance from the OCD when discussing this project with them prior to permitting these wells of where the top of the San Andres should be, because they noticed that there was this large discrepancy in the tops that were being picked for the San Andres in this particular area. But primarily our pick is based on the point that separates these two reservoir systems, where everything above our pick acts and behaves as one reservoir, and everything below our pick acts and behaves as a separate reservoir. Empire's pick for the San Andres is not the point that separates these two reservoir systems. So again, Goodnight's top for the San Andres marks the top of the water management interval, which acts as a completely different reservoir from everything above it.
Now, Mr. McGuire, you're aware that Empire hired Ops Geologic to testify on their opinion about where the top of the San Andres is. Did you identify any conflict between Ops Geologic's picks and Empire's picks?
Yeah, I did. So we got picks from Ops Geologic as well as picks from Empire, and then compared those two. And there were 14 wells where both inside the MSU that where Empire and Ops both had picks for the top of the San Andres. 7 of those 14 wells, 3 were deeper by 60 to 80 feet, and 4 were shallower by 40 to 60 feet. So for Empire to say that they were really consistent, and maybe it was just a few feet difference, that's inaccurate. There was a pretty big discrepancy between those tops and some of those wells.
Slide number 19 is taken from your Exhibit B17. What does this show and how does it relate to your pick for the San Andres?
Yeah, so these are the 6 water supply wells that were drilled to the San Andres. We keyed off of these wells because one, they contributed to this pressure differential between the two, and two, they were actually targeting the San Andres. So we keyed off of these picks, and this table just shows our pick versus the Chevron reported top of San Andres in those wells. When we were reviewing those well files, we noticed that they were picking a low porosity interval, or at least very close to a low porosity interval, which actually correlated to this pressure differential, the confining layer that separates these two reservoirs. So we used those and keyed off of those wells for guidance as to where the top of the San Andres should be picked.
Next slide is, slide 20. This is from Empire Exhibit K14, but you made some modifications. Explain what this shows and how it explains what you were talking about on the previous slides.
Yeah, so this is, like you just said, a modified exhibit from one of the ops folks. It shows the difference between our top and the San Andres top. And then I've just highlighted the water management zone and the interval that's above the water management zone. Our top delineates that water management zone. The other thing that I'd point out here is that our tops are in this cross section are much more consistent with the unit documents saying that the top of the San Andres is between 41 and 4,500 feet, whereas Empire's picks are significantly shallower than that, between 39 and roughly 40, 50. So discrepancy there. The other thing is while there's no direct evidence of Grayburg and San Andres communication, when Empire is describing the communication between the two zones, the yellow interval is what they're discussing, not the water management interval.
Did you call Dr. Davidson's testimony about the potential for an ROZ in the upper San Andres?
I do, yep.
What's your understanding about what zone he was referring to?
Yeah, he was referring to the upper zone. From discussions with him, he does not believe that there's any ROZ in the water management zone.
Okay. Slide 21 is Goodnight Cross Exhibit 20. There's been some discussion about the original, or rather the reservoir pressure that was measured in 1986 from the RFT and the 211 well. Explain what this shows and how it relates. Explain what this shows and summarize your testimony around this issue.
Yeah, so the 211 RFT that was taken in 1986 is not representative of the water management interval that's being used for water supply and water disposal. So this is just a cross-section that we put together that goes from the EMSU 211 on the left-hand side, the EMSU number 1 Empire saltwater disposal well, and then over to our Rhino SWD. And then I've shown where we show the top of the San Andres, which denotes the barrier between the water management zone and everything above it. And then also where Empire has placed the top of the San Andres in that well. And then in blue, we're showing where that RFT measurement was taken at 4,006 feet. And we can see that measurement is not representative of the disposal reservoir.
Slide 22 is one of Empire's demonstratives that was used during its cross-examination. Just remind the commission what this shows.
Yeah, so this is a cross-section that was put together by the Empire folks, and they were showing where we had lost circulation down in the San Andres, and they actually added data that I was unaware of. There's other wells that confirmed the same thing that we saw in all of our wells. So this cross-section kind of zigzags all around the entire EMSU, and I did not have data on some of these wells, but they confirmed the same thing that we're seeing in our wells. But we noticed that some things needed to be corrected, which I've done on the next slide here.
Okay, slide 23 is your modification of that demonstrative. What does it show, and explain what changes you made?
Yeah, so this is just a zoom in of just the Goodnight wells. I didn't have the data to confirm the other wells that were included on this in that cross section. So I've just zoomed into our wells specifically here. The first thing I noticed is that that our top of San Andres was incorrectly depicted on this, particularly in Yaz and Nolan Ryan. So I've redrawn the blue line to be consistent with where we have the top of the San Andres. And then I've slightly modified the pink line where we had complete loss of circulation. So below our orange line was a major loss of circulation where we lost all the drilling fluid to the hole, and not another barrel came back up to surface after we entered the major porosity body of the San Andres. We did have some minor losses shallower in the section below our blue line, which indicated that we were in this different pressure system. But once we got down into the major porosity body, we lost complete circulation. And then just to point out the Andre Dawson here, they have the pink line, which is what they were saying was the lost circulation above the top of our San Andres pick. After reviewing the file, nothing occurred at that particular depth. We had some minor losses a little bit lower in the section, and then major losses where I've depicted it in orange.
What does this tell you about the reservoirs in the Grayburg and San Andres disposal zone?
Well, it tells me that these are two different reservoir systems that are not connected and act completely different from one another.
Slide 24 gets into your review of Empire's ROZ claims. If you would walk through the points on the slide summarizing what's in your testimony.
Yeah, so there's no data to support that the water management zone is a commercial ROZ prospect. It's my opinion that the EMSU water supply wells prove that the water management zone is not a producible ROZ. Empire Zone experts explain that depressuring the ROZ is a valid test method to see if the ROZ is producible. In their literature, they have described this that between 500 and 2,000 barrels of water per day over 30 to 60 days, totaling for in 15,000 to 120,000 barrels of water in total, is sufficient to test an ROZ. The EMSU water supply wells effectively did that. They produced more than 350 million barrels of water over more than 4,000 days, and no oil was produced. Dr. Trentham expected that the water supply wells would have produced some oil if there was producible oil in that zone where they were completed, and they did not. Additionally, Dr. Trentham and Mr. Merrick, while on the stand, said that the water supply wells, their completion intervals must be below the base of the claimed ROZ. So given that information, it's my opinion that these water supply wells have tested the water management zone for producible ROZ, and the test was negative.
Next slide here is from your Exhibit B32. Just give us your key takeaways from your testimony on this slide.
So this is just a comparison of some of the core oil saturations. So on the top left-hand side, we have, this is from some of the ROZ experts' literature on the GLSAU, and they're plotting core oil saturations. So Empire's experts agree that ROZ oil saturations are defined to have a cutoff, a lower end cutoff of 20%. And so the only modification that I've made to the figure up on the top left-hand side is that I've highlighted that 20% line. And we can see that at where the ROZ experts drew the base of the ROZ is where the vast majority of those data points fell below 20%. I did the same thing with the core oil saturations that I have from the EMSU, and using that same methodology, the vast majority of the data points fall below 20% at negative 652. The ROZ experts have defined that ROZs should have similar oil saturations to a mature water flood. So we can see that here, that the main pay of the EMSU field in the Grayburg has an average oil saturation of 18%. And if we go down to what I've defined as the ROZ is it's effectively the same number. But once we go below the point where I've drawn the base of the ROZ, the average oil saturation is 7%. The other thing to note is that Goodnight does not inject above 700 feet subsea, so all of our injection is below the base of the ROZ. So like the bullet point says there, I feel that there's a clear base of the ROZ as shown by the core data that is specific to the EMSU 679 well. Others have explained that that depth is not constant across the field, that it's actually shallower, higher on structure. And I would refer you to Bill Knight's testimony on that. He did a little bit more in-depth look at where the base of the ROZ is in other parts of the field. ROZs, by definition, have a decreasing oil saturation with depth, so it's unfounded to assume that oil saturations would be higher than what is shown in the core data. The other thing that I would mention is that the ROZ experts state that solid hydrocarbon residue is found at or below the base of the ROZ. Solid hydrocarbon residue was described in the cores in that interval below where I picked the base of the ROZ. And the other thing to note is that during Dr. Trentham's deposition, we showed him this chart on the right-hand side, and he agreed with where I put the base of the ROZ. He said maybe you could move it down a few feet, but largely was in agreement with where we put the base of the ROZ.
Anything further on this slide, Mr. McGuire?
No, sir.
Okay. Last slide here, slide 26. Just summarize, if you would, your conclusions based on, and summarize your testimony and your conclusions from your testimony.
Yeah, so the MSU has had a long history of disposal with no claims of interference with the producing Grayburg Formation until Empire acquired the field. Empire has not provided any direct evidence showing that the San Andres disposal is having any impact on production. They haven't pointed to a single well that they feel Goodnight has impacted the production in. The pressure differential observed between the disposal zone and the producing zone proves that these two reservoirs are isolated from one another, and it's expansive across the entire field. And our top pick for the San Andres denotes the top or denotes that delineation between these two reservoir systems. The San Andres is a massive aquifer, and due to its size, the saltwater injection has had no material impact on the downhole reservoir pressures. We haven't changed the bottom hole pressures hardly at all with our injection, causing Empire to need elevated CO2 volumes for their purported project. There's no technical evidence preventing Empire from acquiring additional data in the alleged ROZ previously or currently. They've had this field for more than 4 years now, and I find it quite interesting that if they really believed in this project, that they haven't gone and got the data to bring to this hearing and prove their case to the commission. They've had 4 years to do it. They've known this hearing is coming and have chosen not to do that. I think that there's sufficient evidence, primarily from the water supply wells, that proves that the ROZ is not prospective in the water management interval, as shown by the water supply wells. And they pulled a lot of water out of the ground. It was a sufficient volume to drop the near wellbore pressure, develop a gas drive, and produce oil if there was producible oil there to be had. I feel that test was negative. So with all of that, there's no evidentiary basis to suspend or limit current San Andres disposal or deny the pending applications. All the evidence shows that the San Andres is a world-class disposal reservoir, and it's a critical asset to New Mexico to support its growing production needs. There's a lot of issues in the produced water management space ongoing today, and those issues are continuing to grow as production continues to grow. There's a lot of water that's being shipped over the state line to Texas, and that could cease at any time. I think New Mexico should be very thankful that they have this world-class disposal reservoir that can continue to support New Mexico's growing production needs.
Anything further on this last slide, Mr. McGuire?
I'm sure I could talk a lot more about it, but I'll end there.
Well, I think you're going to over the rest of the day. Mr. Hearing Officer, at this time, I have no further questions of Mr. McGuire and make him available for cross-examination.
Okay, perfect timing, Mr. Rankin. Let's take our morning break. Let's be back at 5 minutes till 11. Ms. Avataka, are we ready there in the room?
Yes, we're ready.
Ms. Novoa, are we back on the record?
Not yet. Whenever you let me know, we will be.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Waymeyer, I'm assuming it's you. You ready to proceed?
It is, and I will be in 2 minutes or less. We just had a technology issue come up on the trying to do this remotely.
Okay.
Perfect. Let you this in there. Okay. Thank you for that courtesy. I think we're ready.
All right. Well, then, Ms. Novoa, let's go back on the record.
Yes, thank you. We're back on the record. The time is 11:58 a.m. Central Standard Time.
Very good. Mr. McGuire, can you hear me all right?
Yes, sir.
Similar to what I've done with other witnesses, what I want to do is talk a little bit about qualifications and then talk about data relied on, talk about particular methodologies that would have been employed, and then talk about some of the conclusions, and we'll do this topically as well. So coming back to just this issue of qualifications in the first place, we've already visited about your lack of education and experience in reservoir engineering. You remember we covered that?
I remember that discussion.
I want to talk a little bit about just the entity Goodnight. You have worked with Goodnight in the states, as a geologist, certainly in the states of North Dakota, Texas, and in now New Mexico. Is that right?
That's correct.
Any other states?
With Goodnight, no.
Have you ever worked in the state of New Mexico before Goodnight?
I grew up in New Mexico, but not as an engineer or a reservoir or a geologist.
And so with respect to responsibility for New Mexico, my understanding is you only recently acquired that responsibility after Mr. Drake left. Is that right?
Yes, that's true. I was involved in the discussions, but I was not overseeing that project. That's correct.
And so with respect to the first time that you would have ever acquired any responsibility to perform work in the state of New Mexico, that would be what month and year?
Well, since I took full responsibility, that would have been September, October of 2023, but, helped on the project in a supporting role before that.
September of 2023 was the answer?
Yeah, I believe that's right. It's in my CV as to when I took over that. I believe that to be correct.
Mr. Rankin covered the idea of you picking tops, and I want to make sure the commission has a clear record on this. You, in fact, did not pick the San Andreas tops here, did you?
Not all of them, no. The vast majority of them, they were picked by Steve Drake. That's correct.
And so if the commission wants to know who at Goodnight picked the tops on the San Andreas, that would not be you, that would be Mr. Drake. Correct?
Yeah, that's true. I reviewed his tops, had discussions with him about his methodology, and agreed and adopted his analysis.
The point in time that you visited with Mr. Drake about his analysis and conferred with him, that was in response to there being litigation over the saltwater disposal wells of Goodnight. Isn't that true?
That's not true, no.
With respect to selecting the locations of the SWDs, if the commission wanted to visit with the human that did that, you would also not be the right person. You did not pick the locations of the SWD wells, did you?
That would be accurate.
By the time you became responsible for New Mexico, there was already litigation pending over the SWD permits and the revocation, wasn't there?
Not the revocation, no.
There hadn't been protests on new permits and
There were
petitions made to revoke permits?
No, the revocation applications came after I stepped into my role.
So at the time you stepped into the role, there was already protests of new permits by Goodnight, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And by the time you stepped into the role, there was already millions of dollars of infrastructure drilled into the ground, right?
Yes.
Just so that the commission understand, in terms of the person who picked the San Andreas tops, coordinated the permitting procedures, and selected the location of the SWDs that are being litigated over as part of this OCC proceeding, that's not you, and they're not going to hear from that person in this case, are they?
No, yeah, that's true. Steve Drake retired at that time, and he had personal plans to go off and enjoy his retirement. And normal course of business is somebody else has to step into that role.
Was that retirement because Goodnight had drilled these SWDs and then sold the company at approximately $1 billion?
Objection relevance.
Yeah, and so it sounds like somebody else is unmute, and I kind of missed the question.
I muted them. I apologize. Someone on the platform had unmuted themselves. Please make sure that if you're on the platform, you keep yourself muted.
May I ask a clean question? Just
please.
I think the
please
question
restate
was
your question. Yeah.
Is the reason that Mr. Drake retired because Goodnight had drilled its SWD wells and sold the company for approximately $1 billion?
Objection assumes facts not in evidence, not relevant outside the scope of Mr. McGuire's testimony.
Yeah, I don't see the relevance of why Mr. Drake retired. I'll sustain the objection.
Let's explore, as one of the things you want to tell this committee about is barriers. Is that right?
Yes.
And as we talk about barriers, and this permeates your written statements, it permeates some of your testimony. Haven't you tried to bolster the reputation of Goodnight by speaking to what a responsible SWD operator it is?
Can you repeat the question? I got a little lost there. I'm sorry.
Yes, doesn't this permeate your written sworn statements? This idea that Goodnight is a responsible saltwater disposal operator. You've placed that in issue. You've sworn to it. That's part of you trying to add credibility to Goodnight in this proceeding.
Yeah, I think we're a prudent operator.
Now, in North Dakota, are you aware that in North Dakota, there was 2.5 million pounds of radioactive material moved from Goodnight wells into the state of Oregon that is being litigated over?
I have a bit of a recollection of something like that, but I believe that was done by a third-party trucking company that we hired, and I'm not super familiar, so I don't want to speak much more than that on it.
There's an owl that was the shipping contractor. Is that the same owl that we've heard about in this case, or is that a different owl?
I don't know.
So with respect to and I mean, this has received media attention that 2.5 million pounds of radioactive chemical waste ended up all the way from North Dakota, from Goodnight Wells into the state of Oregon, transported by a company called OWL. You're aware of all of that?
Vaguely. What year did this happen? I can't remember.
Were you responsible for North Dakota at that point in time for Goodnight?
What year was it?
I don't know what year. I'm asking you. You said you were in charge of North Dakota. It's in your CV. It's been in the last 7 years. It would seem to me if I was in charge of North Dakota and 2.5 million pounds of my radioactive material ended up almost 1,000 miles away in the state of Oregon, I would get to the bottom of that. Have you done that or not?
Well, no, I was never in charge of the North Dakota stuff until I stepped into my role. But
you were in
October
charge
of 2023. And no, this is not a downhole thing. I'm responsible for downhole issues, and this is out of my purview.
So if it happens above the ground, that's not your problem.
That's not my words.
Let's talk about Crane County. Are you familiar with the Texas Tribune article that discussed injection of wastewater into the San Andres and the Glorieta in Crane County, Texas?
I am.
And the article discusses that there were 9 SWD wells involved. 7 of them were Goodnight, weren't they?
Well, 2 of those 7 do not inject into the San Andres.
Were 7 of the wells Goodnight wells?
I can't remember. Can we read the what you're referring to here?
Fracking wastewater injected underground for permanent disposal traveled 12 miles through geological faults before bursting to the surface through a previously plugged West Texas oil well in 2022, according to a new study from Southern Methodist University. Began to spray water. Discusses that of the 9 wells, 7 were Goodnight wells, 2 were Blackbeard wells, that the surface of the earth has risen approximately 40 centimeters. If you go read the SMU article, that NASA is involved as part of this problem. Were you in charge of Texas saltwater operations for Goodnight in 2022?
Yeah, I oversaw parts of Texas. Yes.
Did it include Crane County, Texas?
Partially. I split that workload with others at that time. I was more responsible for our operations down in Reeves County. I was kind of overseeing that stuff, but I was definitely involved in the Crane.
In Crane, go ahead. I didn't intend to interrupt you.
No, that's fine. All good.
In Crane County, Texas, was Goodnight injecting into the San Andres?
Yes, it's a very different situation. The reservoir is completely different down there than it is at EMSU.
The question was a narrow one. In Crane County, Texas, was Goodnight injecting into the San Andres, yes or no?
Yes, but it's a totally different reservoir situation down there.
Were they also injecting into the Glorieta?
No.
With respect to the San Andres, in that instance, had Goodnight taken the position that there was a confining barrier above the San Andres that would have prohibited water from migrating upwards? Did you tell the Railroad Commission that as part of your SWD application?
We do, and we still believe that.
But in fact, the SMU paper has come to the conclusion that water has traveled a great distance and is through fractions out, reached shallower formations. Isn't that true?
That's what it says. We've hired a third-party engineering firm to review all of this stuff. They're just finishing up their study right now, and their preliminary conclusions are that it was not our wells.
Right, but SMU doesn't have any dog in this hunt, does it? It's just right?
Sorry, go ahead. Well, SMU didn't call out Goodnight specifically.
Okay, and even NASA's involved studying this, isn't it?
Well, it uses INSAR data, which is a NASA satellite.
But this would be an instance in which it has been alleged, it's been alleged, that Goodnight's saltwater injection wells in the San Andreas did not confine saltwater to the San Andreas, as Goodnight told the Railroad Commission, and that it is migrated upwards through barriers into shallower formations. That's been alleged.
That's the allegation, not proved.
Basic Energy versus PPC, that's in Reeves County. You said you were responsible for Reeves all by yourself, right?
Yes, sir.
That's a lawsuit you're familiar with?
It is.
Now, the allegations in that case were that Goodnight's saltwater injection was watering out oil and gas hydrocarbon production. Fair summary of the allegations in that one?
Sure, yeah.
Did Goodnight actually defend at the Railroad Commission on the basis that the permits could not be revoked because the waste had already been carried out by Goodnight?
I don't know if we actually had conversations with the Railroad Commission about that. But we did do a study of it and showed that the water was migrating not from our wells. The water actually migrated into that area from the opposite side of the field from where we were injecting.
If you'll focus on my actual question, did Goodnight actually defend at the Railroad Commission on the basis that you can't stop our injection? The waste here has already occurred. Yes or no?
If they did, I'm unaware of that.
You don't know one way or the other?
That's correct.
Goodnight actually paid a settlement to the affected mineral owners, didn't it?
We did because it was cheaper than going to hearing, and it was a very small settlement.
If you're just listening, the Goodnight, in response to allegations that it committed waste of hydrocarbons, paid a settlement to be dismissed from the case to the mineral owners. Isn't that true?
Same answer.
Are you aware of other instances in which Goodnight is being sued for waste?
No, I don't think so. If you have, I'm sure if you know of one, you'll bring it up.
How about the Marston case? Is Marston suing Goodnight and Blackbeard right now?
We won that in summary judgment.
That is at the 8th Court of Appeals, isn't it?
I don't know.
What is Marston alleging Goodnight did to its minerals?
I was not involved in that.
Are those the wells that you mentioned in your direct testimony with Mr. Rankin that Goodnight claims to own? Are those the oil wells, the ones on the Marston Ranch?
Yes, we at one time had oil wells on the Marston Ranch.
So are those the wells that you offered in your testimony in Mr. Rankin, or are those different wells?
Those were included in that statement. Yeah, those came to mind.
Can you think of any others, or were those the wells?
I can think of one other.
Okay, but
maybe another one down. Yeah, maybe two others.
Okay, but in terms of what you had in your mind with Mr. Rankin and answering the questions, it was those Marston wells, wasn't it?
They were included.
Isn't it true that Marston is actually suing Goodnight, saying it was a breach of contract to assign these wells to an SWD operator? They are intentionally killing our oil wells so that they can drill 4 new SWD wells to the waste of our minerals?
No, we have no intention of adding wells on that particular system.
What then are the Marston allegations?
If there's new allegations, I have no idea what they are. That was settled in summary judgment where we won.
You have no clue how the appellate process works in the stage it's in right now at the Eighth Court of Appeals, do you?
Nope.
As we talk about qualifications and methods, you have been educated as a geologist. I give you that, right? That's reflected on your CV, isn't it?
Yes.
Now, as a geologist, did you perform any rock outcrop studies here as part of picking tops or as part of any of the geological or engineering assessments?
I guess I don't understand the question. All of these are subsurface rocks.
Well, tell the commission the very first time you ever saw one of the EMSU subsurface rocks. Was it when Dr. Lindsay brought it into this hearing on the first day?
I've seen cuttings before then.
Mud cuttings?
Yeah.
Okay. In terms of actually looking at a piece of rock, a piece of core, was the first time you ever saw a piece of core when Dr. Lindsay brought it to you?
Sure, I guess that would be accurate. We don't have cores.
Have you ever actually looked at the core of the 679 well or tried to describe that core?
I've seen the pictures, yes.
You think that would be a proper core assessment, looking at a photograph?
That wasn't your question. You said if I had ever seen them.
The actual core and prepared a core study. Have you ever done that?
I have not prepared a core study on any wells at the EMSU.
Have you prepared any study whatsoever on the R Bell?
No.
Have you prepared any study of any other core in or around the EMSU?
I have not.
Any fracture gradient surveys or studies?
So we've tried to establish what the frac gradient is through step rate tests, but we physically can't get there.
So is the answer to my question no? You agree that you have performed no fracture gradient studies in the EMSU?
No, we've tried to test it and we physically can't.
Have you performed any geomechanical studies in the EMSU?
Same answer.
You've never done it?
So we've attempted to, and you physically can't get there given the reservoir conditions.
If the commission wanted to know in the history of time what core studies you've ever performed, I think you mentioned at your deposition there was one back in graduate school or undergrad, and that would have been the only one in the history of your career, correct?
Yeah, I was involved at the TCU Core Lab during graduate school.
That was just one project ever?
No, I was in there all, fairly frequently and, helping out with different studies over time.
Did you hear Dr. Lindsay's testimony about he and Dr. Trentum actually performing outcrop studies in the as to the San Andres?
Yeah.
Have you ever performed
studies?
Have you ever performed a rock outcrop study in your entire life?
I have.
In connection with EMSU?
Not in connection with EMSU.
Would it have only been as part of your schoolwork?
Yes. Well, during the internship, we did some outcrop studies.
Do you know
or participated in those outcrop studies?
Has anybody associated with Goodnight performed any rock outcrop studies on the San Andres?
The outcrops are pretty clearly defined. You can read that literature. It's all published.
Question is, so Dr. Lindsay just did it for giggles, or why would Dr. Lindsay and Dr. Trentum take the time to do it if it wasn't meaningful?
Well, they were trying to publish papers, and yeah, those papers are meaningful.
And so my question is, has anybody with Goodnight ever performed a rock outcrop study? Yes or no?
Well, like I said, I have.
On San Andreas?
No.
Has anybody at Goodnight prepared a material balance study or a simulation model that they have brought here to the OCC as part of any effort to establish their case? Yes or no?
We have not, no. And there's reasons for that.
I'm going to move into your presentation now. And you know, we have had 3 different written testimonies sworn to by you. And also there was a deposition. Do you remember that?
I do.
I guess I'll just start here on this system. In terms of 13 dedicated operators, has Goodnight produced one scrap of paper to Empire in which it has ever given over any of the contracts with operators? If anybody wanted to investigate what you were saying, 13 dedicated operators, have any of those revenue payments, any of the volumes, any of the contracts, any of that been produced in this case to Empire?
Objection, relevance outside the scope. It wasn't asked for, as I don't recall in discovery.
Overruled.
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
You saw fit of your 26 slides. The very first one talks about 13 dedicated operators. Has any of those documents that you testified to, I presume these are evidenced in a written agreement?
Yes, we have contracts.
Have any of those been given over to Empire, and are any of those in any of the evidence that has been filed by way of exhibits with the OCC?
Not to my knowledge. I don't think Empire requested them, and I don't know how it what that has to do with the reservoirs that we're discussing here.
Why did you put it then on your very first slide of 26 and offer testimony to the commission about it?
Because I wanted to describe what the project is, what we're looking at here.
Speaking of things that don't have anything to do with the case, and I agree with you, if there's one dedicated operator or 1,000, I agree with you that that's irrelevant. So we'll just put a bow around that. Now
yeah,
let's
I guess
talk.
The other thought was that it was, Dr. Ampoma was asking some of these questions.
Okay. The at the revocation of the wells, it costs about $2.5 million to drill an SWD. Is that right?
No, that's an underestimation.
I've taken that literally off of one of Goodnight's AFEs. So are you telling me your documents are false, or how have I misread your AFE?
That may have been the AFE, but that's not what it ended up costing.
Through poor execution, you overran your AFE, or what do we do with that?
There's things that happen when you try to drill these wells that deviate from the AFE numbers.
Okay. Where else on the planet Earth has Goodnight permitted SWDs and drilled SWDs within a designated and producing oil unit?
I think this is the only one.
And do you remember that Mr. Tomastik was asked by the commission, have you ever, in all of your permitting experience, you came here and you were offered as the permitting expert on behalf of Goodnight, have you ever seen this before in your life? And he said no. Do you remember that?
Objection, misstates evidence.
Overruled.
Mr. Tomastik was not the permitting expert in this case. Yes, he was involved in the permitting, but I guess I don't remember that testimony.
Did you not offer him as a regulatory expert associated with the permitting process of SWDs?
No, that was more specific to the permitting of his experience as a UIC director.
Okay. You've heard Mr. Macbeth ask the question. You've heard Mr. Tomastik ask the question. You've heard Mr. Alaman ask the question. I've now asked you the question. There has not been one single Goodnight witness who's been able to tell this commission about one SWD in the history of time that they're aware of that was permitted within an existing oil unit. Isn't that true?
We weren't the first commercial SWD operator to permit a well inside the EMSU.
Was the EMSU established at the time that the SWD permits you're referring to were issued?
Yes.
Which operator are you referring to?
The wells are the P11 or the N11 and the P15. Those were permitted not long before we permitted our wells.
What year?
Those are commercial wells. 2018-19 timeframe.
So other than the folks that are parties to this proceeding, you're not aware, no witness for Goodnight has been able to tell the commission about anywhere else on the entire planet Earth in which SWDs were permitted within the boundaries, surface and depth of a designated unit. True?
I haven't looked outside of the units that are in this area, but the units in this area have.
At the revocation of wells inside MSU 40 million, I've looked at all of the briefing here on avoiding watering out of hydrocarbons, PPQ, avoidance of waste, the constitutional charge of this OCC to protect the state's valuable natural resources. I can't see where if the commission wants to take your word on $40 million, where is that relevant to anything that's before the commission for consideration? Or is this just some effort to have the commission feel sorry for Goodnight?
No, that was in direct response to Dr. Impoma's questions.
Great. So we can agree that whether you spent 50 cents or 50 million, that's not relevant to this avoidance of waste charge that's before the OCC today. Agree?
Well, I think that the commission's questions are the most important and we're trying to answer those.
You've cited in your original witness testimony some of the regulations that are before this commission for decision. You didn't know what they meant, but Mr. Rankin provided them to you and you swore to the statement. You remember that?
Can you be specific?
Well, for example, production and paying quantities. You wouldn't have the first idea how to perform a production and paying quantities analysis in New Mexico, do you?
Never done one.
But you didn't have
That's
any problems. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't realize you were continuing to talk.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we hired John Macbeth.
Then why did you swear that there was no evidence? This is in your original witness statement that there was no evidence here that the SWDs of Goodnight would impair production and paying quantities. Now, if you have no clue how to perform that analysis, why would you put it in your opening statement and swear to it?
Well, number one, there's no evidence that we're affecting current production. And number two, I don't think that there's any producible hydrocarbon in the San Andres.
Yeah. By producible hydrocarbon in the San Andres, if the commission wants to see where you've done a technical recoverability study, they're not going to find that anywhere in your sworn statements, are they?
There's no reason to do the study if the oil's not there.
Well, as you bring up this idea that oil is not there, let's cover that here for a moment. Did you sit through Mr. Davidson's testimony? Dr. Davidson, I apologize.
I did.
If I can get some audio. Oh, we don't have audio. I was worried we weren't going to be able to play the audio. Try it again.
what you classify as mud-dominated packstone could be a grain-dominated packstone. True.
I think we're going to have to work on the audio. We'll work on the audio and we'll get it going. Try it one more way. That's all right. We'll get this working after the lunch break. Did you hear Dr. Davidson actually swear that there was a RAS throughout the San Andres? Were you here for that testimony?
I don't believe he said that.
Were you here for Mr. Tomastik's testimony that there was a RAS in the upper San Andres?
I don't remember Mr. Tomastik saying that, but what he was referring to was not the disposal zone, if he did say that.
Were you here for Mr. Macbeth? Actually, strike that. Were you here when Dr. Davidson testified that he's calculated oil saturations from the very top of the San Andres to the very bottom of the San Andres? Did you hear that testimony?
Yeah, I've seen his analysis, and the saturations that he calculated in the disposal zone don't meet the definition of an ROZ, and it's his opinion, to my understanding, that they're not producible.
Well, just since you opened that door, in your sworn statements, you've actually sworn in a opine here as the geologist that this is a shallow water environment, a high energy shallow water environment in the IMSU at the San Andres, haven't you?
Can you show me that?
I will. We're going to get to it. But as you, the author and the person who's literally offering sworn testimony to this commission, you don't remember swearing that this is a shallow water environment?
Probably, let's see. I may have said that referring to parts of the San Andres.
Okay. So as we have a fight over deep water or shallow water, since you raised this Dr. Davidson thing, you know as a fact that you've sworn here that the San Andres was a shallow water environment at IMSU. Isn't that right? And that's actually also consistent with the demonstratives that were shown by Mr. White, one of your other witnesses, who placed IMSU at a shallow water depositional environment. Isn't that right?
I guess it depends on how each of these people are defining shallow.
Coming back to that, since you volunteered that you don't think there's PPQ here, did you hear Mr. Macbeth swear in this court that he, using all of your volumes, what Dr. Davidson and Mr. Knight's come up with? You with me so far?
Which volumes?
Your volumes, Goodnight's volumes of hydrocarbon through the top all the way to the bottom of the San Andres. You with me on the same page of those volumes?
Yeah, so we're talking about calculated oil saturations.
And you heard the testimony that every drop under 20% calculated oil saturation is excluded, isn't it?
Yeah, that doesn't meet the definition of an ROZ.
Okay, so every drop under 20%, which you've heard Dr. Trenum and Mr. Meltzer talk about, 20% would be the place you start an ROZ development, not finish it, right? Do you understand that?
Oh, well, they said that it might be commercial over 20%.
Starting at 20, and then you would bring it down, right?
I don't know if that's what they said specifically.
Now, just coming back, using your volumes under Mr. Macbeth's reservoir engineering analysis here, he agreed that if you have the 45Q tax credits and have $CO2 and have $75 WTI with that 1% escalator, this all it's commercial to the tunes of many millions of dollars. Do you remember that testimony?
Objection misstates prior testimony.
I have no specific recollection of the prior testimony, so you'll have to be more specific, Mr. Rankin, if you want me to rule on whether it misstates it.
Well, Mr. Hearing Officer, Mr. Macbeth provided testimony about his analysis of what and whether and to what extent Empire's proposed project would be economic. And in every instance in his analysis, he did identify that it would not be.
Mr. Waymeyer?
I literally have the audio clip and video clip where Mr. Macbeth swore to precisely what I just asked this witness about. I would love to play it. Gosh, I want to play it so bad right now. But the audio is not coming through. So he absolutely, this is his own expert contradicting what he just volunteered as an unqualified reservoir engineer. I can rephrase the question if that helps.
Why don't you try that?
Mr. Macbeth was asked, taking all of your Goodnight volumes, whatever Mr. Knights and Dr. Davidson came up with after their calculations, and even cutting out every drop of oil under a 20% saturation, use those volumes at $1 CO2 and $75 WTI oil on a 1% annual escalator, the whole project is profitable to Empire. You're not aware of that testimony?
I don't believe that's what he said at all.
We're going to get the audio working and we'll take that up and let it play. Other than CO2 and WTI price, Mr. Macbeth didn't have any other contrary analysis with respect to Mr. West's economic modeling here, did he?
Objection, misstates the testimony, Mr. Macbeth.
I'm looking back through my notes. What I have here is Macbeth said that there was no viable ROS. The pressure data was unreliable. RFT measurements are contradicted. There's unreliable economic analysis, and CO2 EOR economic analysis was unreliable, and Buck Walter's model was unreliable. Those are the 6 bullet points I wrote down. So, Mr. Waymeyer, why don't you try and rephrase or move on?
Mr. McGuire, in terms of the model that Mr. Macbeth built on the economic case, the only variables he fussed with were quantities of crude, CO2, and WTI price. There were no other variables. He didn't build any model that challenged any other variable in a profitability equation. Do you understand that?
He didn't have to, because when he varied those, it showed that the project was cash flow negative.
But okay, but if you use the WTI price and the CO2 price of Empire, you know the project is profitable even with your volumes, don't you?
Objection asked and answered, and that's the exact objection I raised previously. I believe it misstates Mr. Macbeth's testimony.
I'll allow it. Overruled.
Can you restate the question, please?
We talked about the 3 variables for Mr. Macbeth using your volumes, but Empire's WTI price and CO2 price, the project is profitable, isn't it?
I don't think that's what he said.
Let's go in. Well, before I leave this, on the idea of the cost to relocate the wells, can you direct the commission to a regulation that is in its jurisdiction that should care what it would cost Goodnight, according to you, to relocate an SWD well?
A regulation?
Yeah, the commission is going to eventually issue an order here, make findings of fact and conclusions of law. Any of those that care about what it costs Goodnight to relocate an SWD?
No, I'm not aware of any regulation.
So you don't know how this idea of relocation costs would be relevant to anything the commission needs to make a decision on, true?
Other than it was responding to Dr. Ampoma's question.
Now, we covered the New Mexico Constitution. You would agree that New Mexico's Constitution charges the state and this OCC with protecting the state's sacred natural resources, including hydrocarbons?
Mr. Hearing Officer, objection. He's asking for Mr. McGuire to make a legal conclusion about what the New Mexico Constitution says or requires.
I'll allow it. He's just asking him. He's asking him whether he agrees or disagrees with it. Overruled.
Again, restate your question, please.
Do you understand and agree that the Constitution of the state of New Mexico charges the state, its legislature, its governor, and this OCC with protecting the state's sacred natural resources, inclusive of hydrocarbons? Yes or no?
I'm not a lawyer.
But then what?
I have no reason to opine on that.
Then why do you have so many regulations cited in your witness testimony that you swore to if you're not a lawyer?
Which ones?
There's numerous of them. Again, this is your sworn testimony. You don't remember putting numerous regulations in your testimony?
Well, I'm asking you to be specific.
Continue on. With respect to, do you agree that the OCC, when it makes its decision here, should protect correlative rights?
Yeah, I believe that's what they're charged with.
Do you agree that the OCC should ensure waste is prevented?
I think that's what they're tasked with.
Do you understand that waste equates to operating any well in a way that reduces the total quantity of crude petroleum or gas produced?
I think my understanding of the definition of waste is that it's the improper management of reservoir energy that would tend to produce or reduce oil that can be economically recovered.
Where does it say economically recovered in the regulation that I've got up right now?
Well, it says in the definition that waste that term is understood in the oil and gas business. So, oh yeah, you have it right here. As those words are generally understood, in the oil and gas business. So business implies economics.
That's your answer for where the economic case comes from, according to you?
Yeah, if you're not making money doing it, it's not a business.
If this commission decides that allowing Goodnight's SWDs to continue will reduce in less of the state of New Mexico and the BLM's oil being produced by Empire, you with me so far on the assumption? Hypothetical?
One more time. Sorry.
If this commission decides that allowing Goodnight's SWDs to continue injecting, you with me so far? Yes. Would lead to less oil being recovered by Empire in its oil unit. You with me so far on the hypothetical?
Yeah, so we're sure. Yes, I'm following along.
If the commission decides that allowing Goodnight to continue SWD injection would result in less oil being recovered by Empire in its unit, you would agree the OCC should revoke Goodnight's SWD permits. True?
Yeah, that's the commission is tasked with protecting producible hydrocarbons.
And so if they decide,
again, I don't agree that that's the case here.
My question is, hypothetically speaking, if the OCC decides that allowing Goodnight to continue saltwater injection in the EMSU or within 2 miles of the EMSU would result in Empire producing and selling less of its oil and gas hydrocarbons in the EMSU? You with me so far?
I am.
You would agree then that it is the charge of this commission to revoke Goodnight's SWD permits. True?
Sure. But if
Mr. Hearing Officer, I'm trying to get out an objection. Mr. Waymar is misstating the law. I believe that the language of the statute speaks for itself.
Well, the language may speak for itself. It's a hypothetical. If he understands it, he can answer it as a hypothetical. I want to take this opportunity, though, to remind you guys, I know especially on cross, it tends to get contentious. You're doing a fairly good job, but for the sake of clarity of the record, just try not to step on each other's questions and answers. The objection's overruled.
Mr. McGuire, would you like me to re-ask the question?
I would. I get lost with the objections.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get this simple for the commission here. So we got it in one spot. If the commission decides that on the facts that it is presented as part of this case, and you understand the OCC is the final decision maker on facts, right?
I am.
If it decides factually that allowing Goodnight to continue to inject SWD water in the MSU boundaries would result in Empire producing and selling less oil, you would agree then that it is the charge of this OCC to revoke Goodnight's permits. True?
Sure. I guess that's what they're tasked with, but I guess I somewhat disagree with the premise. I don't think that evidence has been shown.
Now, since you brought up the concept of the $40 million or the cost to relocate, do you remember seeing Exhibit I-29 out of the work of Mr. West?
Yeah, I remember seeing this.
And Mr. West came in, he actually physically came to Santa Fe. He sat in the seat, he put his hand up and he swore in the oath to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, didn't he?
He did?
Would you give me that between you and Mr. West, he is a much more educated and qualified reservoir engineer?
Objection, argumentative.
I'll allow it. It is a bit argumentative, but yeah, that's overruled.
You want me to re-ask it, Mr. McGuire?
Please.
Yeah, you understand, you are here sworn in to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and that the part of this OCC, part of their role in listening to your testimony is to assess credibility. Is this someone I can trust or not trust, right?
Sure.
You will give me that between you and Mr. West, he is the much more educated and qualified and experienced reservoir engineer, isn't he?
I don't know what his education is.
How about if he has any engineering degree on the planet Earth? Wouldn't that be more educated than you?
Not necessarily.
Now, did you not look at his CV that was appended to his testimony?
I may have glanced at it, but no, I don't recall going over it line by line.
If the commission says, gosh, this is hard to weigh, I want to now ask about Dr. Lindsay. You would agree with me that Dr. Lindsay is the much more educated, qualified, and experienced geologist as compared to you, as to the San Andreas and the Grayburg and the EMSU, true?
Sounds like ad hominem to me.
You're disagreeing with that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say if you have an issue with my arguments, attack my arguments, not my qualifications.
Okay, and I'm not fussing. It's just kind of like 101 expert. The very first thing is qualifications. If you didn't want to have your qualifications attacked, this wasn't the right place to come swear in.
Okay.
But between you and Dr. Lindsay, you will tell this commission that he is the much more educated, experienced, qualified geologist as concerns all things San Andreas, Grayburg, and EMSU. Isn't that true?
He's been working longer than I have. That's for
You
sure.
would give me the same answer for Dr. Trentham, wouldn't you?
Yeah, they've been working longer than I have, for sure.
And you would give me the same.
If that's the question.
And you would give me the same answer for Mr. Meltzer, wouldn't you?
Same answer, yeah.
Just to understand, we've been here nearly 4 weeks, or actually over 4 weeks, I think, starting today. There, you can tell the commission not one single Goodnight witness is coming here to Santa Fe to testify to the OCC. Isn't that true?
That's not true.
Who employed by Goodnight came to Santa Fe to testify here in Santa Fe to the OCC?
So yeah, if you're being specific to Goodnight employees, no, I was unable to make it to Santa Fe for this.
No, Mr. Drake, nobody else bothered to come here either, did they?
Mr. Drake was there for some of it, but no, he's not testifying.
As we look at, did you prepare any economic case, if other than just taking your word for it that there's no Ross, that Mr. Meltzer's crazy, that Dr. Davidson's crazy, that Mr. Tomastik's crazy, that Mr. West is crazy, everybody's crazy, there's no Ross here. Did you prepare an economic case such as Mr. Macbeth or Mr. West?
I never called those folks crazy.
You do know that the cumulative cash flow that Mr. West opined on here, if Goodnight will just stop its injection, get out of the oil unit it never should have been in, is approximately $5.5 billion.
And that's what he claimed, although I think that Mr. Macbeth disagrees pretty vehemently.
And that would result in $1.1 billion in royalties to the state of New Mexico associated with its 58% share of the minerals in the MSU.
I guess that's an assumption, but again, Mr. Macbeth totally disagrees with this.
On what basis?
On his analysis.
Help the commission. What was the analysis? If you say he totally disagrees, what were the variables Mr. Macbeth disagreed with?
I would refer you to his testimony.
You don't know?
That's not what I said.
Then what is it?
I'd rather not try to recall that, so I would just refer you to his testimony.
All right. Now the OCD, you know, they issued an order in connection with the Piazza well, yes?
I do.
In terms of experience between you on the one hand and the OCD on the other in making determinations about drowning of stratum or economic recovery or total recovery of crude petroleum, you with me so far?
Yes, sir.
Between you and Mr. Getz, who is the far more experienced person there?
In what avenue?
Determining whether hydrocarbons capable of producing oil and gas are being encroached on by water, or that there would be a reduction in the total crude petroleum produced from a pool. Who has more experience and more qualifications as that, as between you and Mr. Getz and the OCD?
That's not what Mr. Getz said.
My question is who the qualifications, who has better qualifications there?
To determine, sorry, say it again.
Who has more experience and qualifications to determine in the state of New Mexico whether hydrocarbons risk drowning that are capable of producing oil and gas, or that the total ultimate recovery of crude petroleum would be diminished? Between you and Mr. Getz and the OCD, who has more of that experience?
I don't know Mr. Getz's full background.
Isn't it true that the order of the division was that Empire has provided sufficient evidence for continued assessment of the unitized interval for potential recovery of any additional hydrocarbon resources remaining in place, and that approval of the permit proposed well would contradict the responsibility of the OCD to prevent the drowning by water of any stratum or part thereof capable of producing oil or gas, or both oil and gas in paying quantities, and to prevent the premature and irregular encroachment of water or any other kind of water encroachment that reduces or tends to reduce the total ultimate recovery of crude petroleum, oil or gas, or both from the pool.
Mr. Hearing Officer, objection. The document speaks for itself.
Overruled.
If the question was, yes, you read that accurately.
That is what the OCD, after being presented with evidence, determined here, isn't it?
I disagree that they were provided that evidence during the Piazza hearing. Empire really provided no evidence for an ROZ. It wasn't until additional testimony or additional evidence was submitted in a different case did this order come out, and I disagree.
But you're not really a very good person to rely on for ROZ opinions, because in fact, Dr. Davidson and Mr. Tomastic have both sworn in this proceeding that there is an ROZ in the San Andres. They disagree with you.
Objection. Mischaracterizes prior testimony.
Okay, Mr. Rankin, again, you're going to have to be a little more specific on how it mischaracterizes prior testimony, because it's been a while. How does it mischaracterize it?
Neither of the witnesses that Mr. Waymire references said anything along those lines. Mr. Waymire is overstating what was referred to in their testimony, and he's mischaracterizing it.
Okay, these were Goodnight witnesses?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Waymeyer, rephrase the question and try not to argue with the witness.
I have two clips, Mr. McGuire, that are ready to play right now. If I can get the audio to work through this remote thing, since you're not here.
Let's call it here then, Mr. Waymeyer. At that point, you can practice it and during the lunch hour and make sure that it's working on your end, and then we can pick up. Mr. Hearing Officer, I apologize for interrupting like that, but I think it would be a great time for us to cut out for lunch.
Perfect. All right. What time, Mr. Chairman, what time do you want us all back?
We will meet back at 1:15.
Okay, folks. Thank you all. Enjoy your lunch. See you at 1:15.
Yeah.